"Ma'am, step away from the massage oils, now!" The command sliced through the tranquil hum of ocean waves and meditation music. A young black woman in a burgundy silk robe freezes mid-reach, her fingers inches from the lavender essence she'd been admiring. Around her, the Sea of Roses spa glitters like a jewel box. Floor-to-ceiling windows framing endless Caribbean blue, marble heated to body temperature, the scent of eucalyptus and money hanging thick in the salt air. But right now, all 28-year-old Naomi Chen can feel is the weight of 40 pairs of eyes turning toward her like searchlights. The Sea of Roses wasn't just a cruise ship. It was a floating monument to wealth, a 17-deck cathedral of excess where billionaires paid $85,000 per week to forget the world existed beyond champagne sunsets and caviar breakfasts. The Serenity Spa occupied the entire observation deck, a glass-enclosed sanctuary where the ocean stretched in every direction like liquid sapphire, and the only sounds were supposed to be breathing, water, and the gentle collision of privilege with pampering. Naomi had boarded in Miami 3 days ago with a single carry-on bag and a reservation that had taken 6 months to secure. She'd spent those days observing, photographing, taking notes in a leather journal she kept hidden in her cabin safe. She'd watched how staff interacted with guests in designer resort wear versus those in department store casual. She'd documented which treatment rooms received priority cleaning, which clients were offered complimentary upgrades, which names were remembered, and which were persistently mispronounced despite correction. The pattern was unmistakable, documented, and about to become very, very public. But first, she had an appointment. Naomi had arrived at the spa reception exactly 11 minutes early, her burgundy robe provided by the ship's concierge service, her natural hair pulled into a sleek bun that had taken 40 minutes to perfect. She'd chosen minimal jewelry, a single gold necklace her grandmother had given her, and absolutely no makeup beyond lip balm. She wanted to see how she'd be treated without the armor of obvious wealth, without the performance of belonging. The reception area sparkled with calculated serenity. White orchids in crystal vases, smooth river stones arranged in precise spirals, a waterfall wall that cost more than most people's homes, trickling with water imported from an Icelandic glacier. Behind the curved marble desk sat 2 women, both blonde, both wearing the spa's signature navy uniform with white piping that somehow managed to look both clinical and luxurious. The younger one, maybe 25, glanced up with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when she registered Naomi's face. Her name tag read, Brittany Morrison, Spa Coordinator. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Naomi had seen that micro-expression 1,000 times before, the brief recalculation happening behind pleasant eyes. "Good afternoon. Do you have an appointment?" Brittany's tone was professional, but cooler than it had been with the woman who'd checked in 3 minutes earlier, a redhead in Hermes slides who'd been greeted by name despite this allegedly being her first visit. Naomi Chen, 3 o'clock deep tissue massage with aromatherapy enhancement. Brittany's fingers moved across her tablet screen with deliberate slowness. I'm showing that appointment as tentative pending payment verification. My credit card was charged $890 when I booked 6 months ago. Sometimes international cards have issues processing fully. Brittany's smile had frozen into something that looked painted on. I'll need to run the card again and see additional verification. Passport, secondary payment method, things like that. Naomi had expected this. She'd experienced versions of it at luxury hotels in Paris, exclusive restaurants in Tokyo, private clubs in London. The subtle gatekeeping disguised as policy, the extra hoops that appeared only for certain faces. She pulled her phone from her robe pocket and opened her banking app, turning the screen toward Brittany. "Here's the transaction from January, confirmation number BH4782SROS. And here's my current account balance, since you seem concerned about my ability to pay for services I've already paid for." The screen showed a number with enough zeros to make Brittany's eyebrows climb toward her hairline. For just a moment, confusion replaced condescension. Then the older woman behind the desk stood up, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Is there a problem here, Brittany?" The voice belonged to someone who'd spent years perfecting the art of polite intimidation. The woman was maybe 32, with the kind of severe beauty that came from disciplined living and expensive skincare. Her name tag identified her as Rebecca Lancaster, spa director. Her blonde hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful, and her blue eyes moved over Naomi with the clinical assessment of someone evaluating livestock. This guest is claiming she has a 3 o'clock appointment, but the payment hasn't properly cleared, and she's being difficult about verification procedures. Naomi's voice remained level, but something sharp entered her tone. I'm not being difficult. I'm questioning why I'm being asked to prove I can afford services I purchased half a year ago, especially when I watched you check in another guest 3 minutes ago without requesting anything beyond her name. Rebecca's smile was all teeth and no warmth. Our verification procedures apply to all guests equally. If you'd like to file a complaint, you're welcome to visit guest services on deck 4. However, I'm afraid without proper clearance, we can't proceed with your appointment today. The spa's waiting area had gradually filled with other guests waiting for their own treatments. A woman in a white monogrammed robe pretended to read a magazine while openly staring. 2 others whispered behind their hands near the cucumber water dispenser. A man in designer swim trunks had his phone out, though whether he was filming or just scrolling was impossible to tell. Naomi felt the familiar heat rising in her chest, the anger that came from being treated like a threat in spaces she'd paid to occupy, the exhaustion of having to prove her right to exist in rooms full of white faces that never questioned their own belonging. But she'd learned long ago that anger, no matter how justified, would only be used against her. Calm was her weapon. Documentation was her armor. I'd like your names and employee numbers, please. Rebecca's expression flickered, just barely. Excuse me? Your full names and employee identification numbers, and I'd like the name of your direct supervisor and the contact information for Sea of Roses corporate headquarters. I don't think that's... I'm not asking. Naomi's voice remained quiet, but it carried an edge now that made several guests look up from their magazines and meditation apps. You've denied me access to a service I've purchased and paid for in full. You've subjected me to verification procedures you didn't apply to other guests. You've made a scene in front of other patrons, implying I'm somehow fraudulent or suspicious. I'd like the names of everyone involved so I can include them in my formal complaint. Brittany had gone pale. Rebecca's jaw tightened, 2 small muscles jumping beneath her carefully applied foundation. Ma'am, if you continue to be disruptive, I'll need to call security. Disruptive. Naomi repeated the word slowly, letting it hang in the eucalyptus-scented air. I arrived on time for an appointment I booked and paid for months ago. I've been polite, calm, and cooperative. But asking for your name so I can document discrimination is disruptive? I never said anything about... Rebecca caught herself, but too late. The word hung unspoken between them, massive and unmistakable. That's when the spa's side door opened, and a woman emerged from the treatment rooms, her face flushed and annoyed. She was maybe 45, wearing a spa robe identical to Naomi's, her highlighted hair still damp from what looked like a recent facial. Excuse me, Rebecca? I've been waiting in treatment room 3 for 15 minutes. Where's Yuki? My lymphatic drainage was supposed to start at 2:45. Rebecca's entire demeanor transformed instantly. Her shoulders relaxed. Her smile became genuine. Her voice dropped into warm professionalism. Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry for the delay. Yuki is just finishing with another client. Can I offer you champagne while you wait? We have a lovely vintage from... I don't want champagne, Rebecca. I want the service I'm paying $200 for. Of course, absolutely. Brittany, please escort Mrs. Patterson back to the relaxation lounge and bring her whatever she'd like from our premium menu. Everything complimentary, naturally. Mrs. Patterson nodded, slightly mollified, and allowed Brittany to guide her away. As they passed Naomi, Mrs. Patterson's eyes flicked over her with casual dismissal, the way someone might glance at furniture, and then she was gone, leaving a wake of expensive perfume. The contrast was so stark, so undeniable, that several other guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Naomi checked her phone. Her 3 o'clock appointment was now 12 minutes past due. So, my massage? Rebecca crossed her arms, a defensive posture that made her navy uniform pull tight across her shoulders. As I've explained, without proper verification, Here's what's going to happen. Naomi's voice remained quiet, but every word landed with precision. You're going to honor my appointment that I booked and paid for 6 months ago, or I'm going to walk out of this spa, go directly to my cabin, and make several phone calls that will change your life in ways you can't currently imagine. Those are your two options. For a long moment, Rebecca just stared, her expression caught between anger and something that might have been the first whisper of doubt. Then, she made her decision. The wrong one. The one that would haunt her professional reputation for years to come. Security to Serenity Spa, please. We have a guest who needs escort. The footsteps approaching from the spa's private corridor sounded military, precise, each heel strike against marble echoing with authority. 2 security officers appeared, both men, both with the kind of build that suggested gym memberships and protein supplements. The taller one, maybe 40 with graying temples, wore a name tag identifying him as Derek Walsh, head of security. His partner looked younger, nervous, his hand hovering near the radio clipped to his belt like a gunslinger in a western. "What's the situation?" Derek's voice was professionally neutral, but his eyes had already made their assessment. Woman of color in a robe, blonde spa director with arms crossed, scattered witnesses pretending not to watch. He'd seen this movie before. Rebecca's composure returned the moment backup arrived. She straightened her spine and gestured toward Naomi with one manicured hand. This woman has been asked multiple times to leave. She's refusing to comply with standard verification procedures and making other guests uncomfortable. Naomi's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Making guests uncomfortable. That's your official position? Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with us. Derek took a step closer, not threatening yet, but establishing presence. We can sort this out in the security office where it won't disturb other guests. I'm not going anywhere until I get the massage I paid $890 for 6 months ago. The younger security officer, whose name tag read Tyler Grant, cleared his throat. Ma'am, if you don't cooperate voluntarily, we're authorized to escort you. Escort me where exactly? Off the ship? We're 300 miles from land. Naomi pulled her phone out again, this time opening the camera app. But please, touch me. I'd love to have video evidence of 2 men physically removing a paying guest who's done absolutely nothing wrong. Derek's jaw tightened. 20 years in security had taught him when he was walking into a minefield. Nobody's touching anyone. We're just going to have a conversation. We can have it right here. Naomi's thumb hovered over the record button. In fact, I insist on it. These witnesses can verify everything that's said. Rebecca made an exasperated sound. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Confrontational, disruptive. Defending myself isn't confrontational. Asking for services I've paid for isn't disruptive. But I notice you keep using those words, Rebecca. Why do you think that is? The question hung in the air like smoke. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. A woman near the waterfall wall actually stood up and quietly left, as if she could sense something explosive about to detonate and wanted clear of the blast radius. Tyler leaned toward Derek and whispered something. Derek's expression flickered with uncertainty. Ma'am, what's your name and cabin number? Naomi Chen, Suite 1847, Platinum Deck. Both security officers went still. Suite 1847 wasn't just expensive, it was legendary. The Royal Suite, all 2,400 square feet of it, with a private balcony larger than most people's apartments and a price tag of $125,000 for the week-long voyage. It was currently one of only 3 occupied suites in that tier, and security had been specifically briefed on the VIP guests occupying them. Derek pulled out a tablet and scrolled through what appeared to be a guest manifest. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, concern, and finally something that looked like dread. Rebecca, can I speak with you privately? Whatever you need to say can be said here. Rebecca's confidence was beginning to show hairline cracks. I have nothing to hide. Derek showed her his tablet screen. The color drained from Rebecca's face like someone had opened a tap. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no sound emerged. What? Brittany had returned from escorting Mrs. Patterson and caught the tail end of the exchange. What is it? Naomi smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression that had crossed her face all afternoon. Would you like to tell them, Derek? Or should I? Derek looked like a man watching his pension evaporate. Ms. Chen, I apologize for any confusion. If you'll allow me to— No, the word was quiet, but absolute. You don't get to apologize your way out of this. Not until everyone understands exactly what happened here. She turned to address the dozen or so guests who remained in the waiting area, phone cameras now openly pointed in her direction. My name is Naomi Chen. I'm 28 years old. 3 years ago, I founded Chen Maritime Luxury Holdings, a private equity firm specializing in luxury hospitality acquisitions. Last month, my company purchased 73% controlling interest in Oceanic Voyages International, the parent company that owns and operates the Sea of Roses. The silence that followed could have swallowed stars. Which means, Naomi continued, her voice carrying with crystalline clarity, that as of 31 days ago, I effectively own this ship, this spa, and every single person working in it. Rebecca made a sound like she'd been punched in the stomach. Brittany actually stumbled backward, gripping the reception desk for support. Tyler had gone completely white. Even Derek, who'd probably thought he'd seen everything, looked like someone had just rewritten physics in front of him. That's impossible, Rebecca whispered. You're too young. You can't be— I graduated from Wharton at 20. Made my first million in cryptocurrency by 23. Built a portfolio worth 9 figures by 26. And yes, Rebecca, I'm black, I'm young, and I'm wearing a robe that doesn't scream money. But that doesn't make me suspicious. It makes you racist. The word landed like a grenade. Several guests gasped. One woman dropped her magazine. The spa's meditation music continued its oblivious loop of pan flutes and ocean sounds, absurdly peaceful against the devastation unfolding in real time. Brittany was crying now, silent tears tracking through her foundation. Oh my God, oh my God. I've spent the last 3 days on this ship documenting discrimination, Naomi said. Not just here, but in the restaurants, the bars, the casino. I've watched your staff treat guests differently based on how they look, how they dress, how they speak. I've recorded conversations. I've taken notes. I've built a case that would make any civil rights attorney weep with joy. She walked slowly toward Rebecca, who seemed rooted to the marble floor, unable to move or speak. Do you know what the penalty is for discrimination in maritime commerce? It's complicated because international waters muddy jurisdiction, but federal law still applies to U.S.-flagged vessels. The Sea of Roses is registered in Delaware, which means you're subject to the Civil Rights Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and about 17 other pieces of legislation you've been violating with enthusiastic consistency. Derek found his voice, though it came out strangled. Ms. Chen, I swear I had no idea who you were. If you'd known, you'd have treated me differently. But that's exactly the problem, isn't it? Naomi's eyes were hard as diamonds. The fact that my net worth determines whether I deserve basic human dignity is the sickness I'm here to cure. Rebecca finally moved, stumbling forward with hands raised in supplication. Please, please, I have a daughter. I need this job. I made a mistake, but I can fix it. You can't fix systemic racism with an apology, Rebecca. It takes structure, accountability, consequences. Naomi pulled up another app on her phone, this one showing what appeared to be architectural blueprints. I've already hired consultants to redesign this spa. New management structure, new hiring practices, mandatory bias training for every single employee, from housekeeping to the captain. Any staff member with documented discrimination complaints will be terminated, full stop. She swiped to another screen. I've also established a whistleblower fund. Anyone who reports discriminatory practices will receive financial protection and legal support, because the problem isn't just a few bad actors, it's a culture that protects them. Tyler had sunk into one of the waiting area chairs, his head in his hands. Brittany was openly sobbing now. Derek looked like he was calculating his remaining mortgage payments, but Rebecca, interestingly, had stopped begging. Her face had gone blank, the professional mask cracking to reveal something harder underneath. You set us up. You came here specifically to trap us. I came here to see if the complaints I'd been reading in online reviews and internal reports were accurate. You trapped yourselves by being exactly who you are when you think nobody important is watching. Naomi checked her watch, a Patek Philippe that cost more than Rebecca's annual salary. It's now 3:47. My massage appointment was supposed to start 47 minutes ago. I'm going to ask one more time. Are you going to honor the service I paid for? Rebecca's laugh was bitter and brittle. You're going to fire me anyway. Why would I give you anything? Because how you handle the next 60 seconds determines whether you leave this ship with a severance package and a neutral reference, or with security footage of your discrimination going viral on every social media platform and news outlet in North America. The threat hung in the perfumed air like a blade. Around them, at least 8 phones were now openly recording. One guest had her laptop out, live streaming to what appeared to be a significant audience. The story was already escaping, spreading through the ship's Wi-Fi network like wildfire, impossible to contain. Rebecca's shoulders sagged. All the fight, all the superiority, all the carefully maintained authority drained out of her like water from a cracked vessel. Suite 7. Yuki is our best massage therapist. Brittany will take you back. Brittany looked up through swollen eyes. I will? Yes. Naomi's voice softened slightly when she addressed the younger woman. You will, and we're going to have a conversation about what you've witnessed here and what you're going to do about it. The walk to Treatment Suite 7 felt like a funeral procession. Brittany led the way with shaking hands, past marble columns and through doors that whispered shut on expensive hinges. Other spa staff peeked out from treatment rooms and supply closets, their faces registering confusion and alarm as gossip spread through the staff channels faster than official communication ever could. Suite 7 was everything the spa's brochure had promised. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing nothing but Caribbean horizon, a massage table draped in Egyptian cotton, candles that smelled like sandalwood and redemption. Yuki, a tiny woman in her 50s, with the kind of powerful hands that could find every knot and secret your muscles had been keeping, looked up in surprise when Naomi entered. Ms. Chen, I thought your appointment had been canceled. It wasn't. There was just some confusion at the front desk. Yuki's expression suggested she'd heard at least some version of what had transpired. I see. Well, you're here now. Please, make yourself comfortable. Can I get you cucumber water? Herbal tea? Just the massage, thank you. As Naomi settled onto the table face down in the cushioned cradle, Brittany lingered near the door. Ms. Chen, can I ask you something? You can ask. Are you really going to fire everyone? Naomi was quiet for a long moment, breathing in sandalwood and possibility. I'm going to fire everyone who deserves to be fired. People who discriminate, who abuse power, who make guests feel unwelcome because of how they look. But people who were complicit out of fear, who stayed silent because they were young or scared or didn't know how to fight back. She turned her head to look at Brittany directly. Those people get a second chance, if they're willing to do the work to earn it. Brittany nodded slowly, tears starting fresh. I should have said something. When Rebecca told me to give you extra screening, when she said we needed to protect the spa's atmosphere, I knew it was wrong, but I thought if I said anything, I'd lose my job. And now you've learned that staying silent can cost just as much as speaking up. After Brittany left, Yuki's hands began their work, finding the knots of tension that had built up over 3 days of careful observation and documented injustice. The massage was extraordinary, worth every dollar of the $890 charge, but Naomi barely felt it. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead, planning the press conference, drafting the policy changes, imagining the new face of luxury that didn't require anyone to diminish themselves to access beauty. Outside the treatment room windows, the Caribbean stretched endless and blue, indifferent to human drama but witness to all of it. The Sea of Roses sailed on through calm waters, carrying its cargo of privilege and pain toward an uncertain future, where maybe, just maybe, dignity wouldn't be a luxury reserved for those who looked a certain way. The massage ended at 4:52 p.m. Naomi emerged from Treatment Suite 7 with muscles that felt like warm honey and a mind sharp as surgical steel. Yuki had worked miracles on her shoulders, but the real tension, the kind that lived in your chest and made your jaw ache at night, that required a different kind of release. The spa's reception area had transformed in her absence. Where before there had been casual luxury and oblivious guests, now there was barely concealed chaos. Rebecca stood rigid behind the reception desk, her face the color of old newspaper. Brittany hovered nearby, red-eyed and trembling. Derek had been joined by 3 additional security personnel, all of them wearing expressions that suggested they'd been briefed on exactly whose ship they were standing on. But the real change was in the guests. Word had spread like wildfire through the Sea of Roses insular community of wealth. The waiting area was now packed with people who definitely didn't have spa appointments. They'd come to witness history, to see the young black woman who'd bought an entire cruise line just to expose its racism. Phones were everywhere, a forest of recording devices capturing every moment for posterity and social media. Naomi walked to the center of the reception area, and the murmur of conversation died instantly. She was still wearing her burgundy robe, her natural hair still pulled back in that sleek bun, but something about her presence had shifted. Maybe it was the knowledge of who she really was, or maybe it was simply that she'd stopped hiding her power. "I want to thank everyone for their patience during what I'm sure has been an unusual afternoon." Her voice carried effortlessly, trained by 3 years of boardroom presentations and investor pitches. "As you've probably heard, I'm Naomi Chen, and I own controlling interest in the company that operates this vessel." A ripple of whispers. Someone in the back actually applauded, then stopped when nobody joined them. "I came aboard the Sea of Roses 3 days ago to conduct what we call a field assessment. I wanted to see firsthand whether the complaints I'd been reading about discriminatory practices were isolated incidents or symptoms of something systemic." She paused, letting the word land. "Unfortunately, what I found exceeded my worst expectations." Rebecca made a small sound, quickly stifled. Brittany was openly crying again. "Over the past 72 hours, I've documented 43 separate instances of differential treatment based on race, age, perceived economic status, and disability. I've watched staff members ignore black and brown guests while fawning over white patrons. I've seen wheelchair users directed to accessible areas that were actually inferior accommodations. I've heard conversations in supposedly private spaces where staff members mocked guests' accents, clothing choices, and physical appearances. The crowd's energy had shifted from curiosity to discomfort. Several of the watching guests were looking at each other with new uncertainty, perhaps wondering if their own preferential treatment had come at someone else's expense. Today's incident at this spa was not an anomaly. It was business as usual. Rebecca Lancaster demanded verification. I've never seen her request from white guests. She implied I was fraudulent, suspicious, and didn't belong here. When I objected, she called security to have me removed from a space I'd paid to occupy. Derek looked like he wanted to melt into the marble floor. His hand kept moving to his radio, a nervous tick that betrayed his desire to be anywhere else. But here's what's going to happen next. Naomi pulled out her phone and projected her screen onto the spa's large display wall, which normally showed serene nature videos. Now it showed a detailed organizational chart. "Effective immediately, I'm implementing new management structure for all Oceanic Voyages properties." The chart showed a complete restructuring. New oversight positions, bias compliance officers, guest advocacy liaisons, third-party monitoring systems. "Rebecca Lancaster, you're terminated effective immediately for discriminatory practices, failure to uphold company values, and abuse of authority. Your severance package will be based on your years of service minus penalties for documented violations. You have 1 hour to clear your personal belongings and exit the ship at our next port." Rebecca didn't argue. She simply nodded, pulled off her name tag, and placed it on the reception desk with shaking hands. The small piece of metal made a sound like a gunshot in the silent room. "Tyler Grant, you're suspended pending investigation for your role in attempting to remove a guest without proper cause. You'll receive 2 weeks paid leave during which you'll undergo bias training. If you complete it successfully and demonstrate genuine commitment to change, you'll be reinstated with probationary status." Tyler's relief was visible. "Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chen. I swear I'll—" "Don't thank me. Thank the fact that you're young enough to still be moldable. Don't waste this chance." Derek Walsh. The head of security stood at attention like a soldier awaiting court-martial. "You responded to a discriminatory complaint without proper verification. However, your record shows 15 years of service with minimal incidents prior to today. You'll undergo retraining, and you'll work directly with our new bias compliance officer to revise security protocols. Consider this your only warning. Derek's exhale was audible. Understood, ma'am. Brittany Morrison. The young woman looked up with swollen eyes. You were complicit in discrimination, but you also demonstrated capacity for recognizing wrongdoing and expressing genuine remorse. You're reassigned to our new guest advocacy division. Your first responsibility will be personally contacting every guest who filed a discrimination complaint in the past 18 months and facilitating their compensation process. Brittany's face crumpled with something between relief and shame. I'll make it right, I promise. Naomi turned to address the crowd of witnesses. For those of you who've been guests on the Sea of Roses, you'll be receiving communication within the next 48 hours. If you've experienced or witnessed any form of discrimination during your voyage, we want to hear about it. Full confidentiality, legal support provided, and fair compensation for those whose experiences warrant it. A hand went up in the back. A black woman, maybe 60, wearing elegant linen. What if we didn't report it because we didn't think anyone would care? Then report it now. Every story matters. Every experience helps us understand what needs to change. The woman nodded, something like hope flickering across her face. The Sea of Roses will dock in St. Thomas tomorrow morning. We'll be taking on new management personnel and beginning immediate retraining for all staff. This will impact your vacation experience. There may be service delays, schedule changes, inconvenience. For that disruption, every guest currently aboard will receive 50% refund of their voyage cost and priority booking for a future sailing. Gasps rippled through the crowd. 50% of an $85,000 per week cruise was not insignificant money, even for people who could afford to be there. But more importantly, when you sail with us again, you'll be experiencing something unprecedented in luxury hospitality, truly inclusive excellence. Not diversity as performance or marketing gimmick, but as fundamental operating principle. Naomi's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen, her legal team, and declined it. They could wait. I'm not naive enough to think we'll fix decades of systemic bias in a few weeks. This work is generational, but it starts with accountability, with consequences, with powerful people deciding that their comfort matters less than other people's dignity. She walked over to where Rebecca still stood, now just a woman in a Navy uniform that no longer represented any authority. Rebecca, before you go, I want you to understand something. I didn't buy this company to ruin your life. I bought it because 47 people filed complaints about discrimination, and every single one was dismissed as oversensitivity or miscommunication. 47 people were told their pain didn't matter. Rebecca's voice came out as a whisper. I never thought of it that way. I was taught that maintaining standards meant keeping certain people out, then learn differently. Because whatever you do next, wherever you work, you're going to carry this with you. Choose whether that memory makes you better or bitter. Rebecca nodded once, then turned and walked toward the staff exit with whatever dignity she had left. The door whispered shut behind her, and with it closed a chapter on the old way of doing things. Brittany approached hesitantly. Ms. Chen, what do I do first? For the advocacy position? First, you're going to write a letter to every person you watched Rebecca discriminate against. Full accountability, no excuses. Then you're going to help me design training protocols that make it impossible for the next Brittany to stay silent out of fear. I can do that. Brittany's voice was small but determined. I want to do that. By 6:30 p.m., the spa had emptied except for core staff and a few lingering witnesses still recording for their social media followers. Naomi stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows watching the sun descend toward the horizon, painting the Caribbean in shades of gold and crimson that looked like justice feels when it finally arrives. Her phone had been buzzing constantly. Her legal team, her PR people, her investors, all of them managing the story that was now exploding across news outlets and social media platforms worldwide. Young black CEO exposes luxury cruise racism was trending on 3 continents. The video footage from the confrontation had been viewed over 8 million times in 4 hours. But the calls that mattered most were the ones coming from people who'd experienced similar discrimination and never thought anyone would care. Her inbox was flooding with stories. The family denied a proper table at the captain's dinner. The elderly couple told the premium excursions were probably not a good fit for your demographic. The solo black traveler who'd been stopped by security 9 times in 4 days because he matched a description. Every story was a wound, and every wound would need tending. Derek approached quietly, his earlier military bearing replaced with something more humble. Ms. Chen, I just wanted to say, I've worked security for 20 years, and I've never thought about how many times I responded to calls like today's without asking why. I just assumed management knew what they were doing. That's how systems perpetuate themselves. Good people following bad orders because they assume authority equals correctness. The training you mentioned, when does that start? Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. Dr. Angela Martinez is flying in tonight. She specializes in deconstructing bias in high-pressure professions. Fair warning, her methods are uncomfortable. She's going to make you confront things about yourself you've probably never examined. Derek nodded slowly. Good. I've got 2 daughters. I want them growing up in a world where their dad helped make things better, not worse. As darkness settled over the water, Naomi made her way back to the royal suite on Platinum Deck. The 2,400 square feet of luxury felt obscene after the day's events, but it had also been strategically necessary. Nobody questioned the legitimacy of someone who could afford Suite 1847. She poured herself a whiskey from the suite's premium bar, a 23-year-old Pappy Van Winkle that cost $400 per pour, and stepped onto the private balcony. Behind her, the sea of roses glittered like a floating city, thousands of lights reflecting off dark water. Inside those lights were people whose lives had just changed in ways they didn't fully understand yet. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. Hello, Mom. Naomi Chen, what in the world did you just do? Her mother's voice carried equal parts pride and terror. Your face is all over CNN. They're calling you a revolutionary. I documented discrimination and held people accountable. That shouldn't be revolutionary. Baby, in this world? It absolutely is. Her mother paused. Your grandmother would be so proud. She spent 40 years cleaning luxury hotels where she wasn't allowed to use the front entrance. Now her granddaughter owns them. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes for the first time all day. I'm doing this for her, for everyone who had to shrink themselves to survive in spaces that should have welcomed them. I know, baby. I know. Just be careful. Power doesn't surrender gracefully. After they hung up, Naomi pulled up her social media. The response was overwhelming. Millions of comments, thousands of shares, hundreds of people calling her a hero, a disruptor, a voice for the voiceless. But there were also the expected responses. Accusations of playing the race card, claims she'd manufactured the incident for publicity, death threats from people who apparently found anti-discrimination efforts threatening to their worldview. She'd expected all of it. Change was never comfortable for those benefiting from the status quo. But mixed in with the noise were the messages that mattered. Thank you for giving me language for what I experienced. My daughter saw this and said she wants to be like you. I filed a complaint because of your courage. You showed me dignity isn't something you beg for. It's something you demand. Those messages, Naomi saved. She'd need them for the hard days ahead, when the lawsuits came, when the backlash intensified, when she'd question whether disrupting an entire industry was worth the personal cost. At 11:47 p.m., and as the Sea of Roses sailed through calm Caribbean waters toward an uncertain tomorrow, Naomi composed one final message on social media. Today I was discriminated against in a luxury spa on a ship I own. That irony isn't lost on me. But here's the real story. Wealth didn't protect me from racism. It just gave me the power to do something about it. Most people experiencing discrimination don't have that power. They get kicked out, humiliated, gaslit into thinking they're oversensitive or imagining things. This is for all of them. The change starts now, but it doesn't end with one ship or one company. It ends when dignity is default, not luxury. If you've experienced discrimination in hospitality, travel, or any service industry, share your story with Dow. Dignity is not luxury. Every voice matters. Every experience counts. We're building something better together. She posted it, turned off her phone, and slept better than she had in 3 years. knowing that tomorrow morning, 47 people would wake up to emails informing them that their complaints had been heard, believed, and acted upon. And somewhere in the depths of the ship, Rebecca Lancaster packed her belongings with shaking hands and wondered how she'd explain to her daughter why dignity had turned out to be more valuable than protecting a job she'd performed without conscience. The revolution didn't happen in a single dramatic moment. It happened in thousands of small choices that followed. The retraining session where Derek Walsh cried, admitting he'd profiled guests. The letter Brittany Morrison wrote taking full accountability for her complicity. The new hiring protocols that prioritized lived experience of discrimination over pedigree. The monitoring systems that made bias visible and consequently impossible to ignore. 3 months later, the Sea of Roses would dock in Miami with the lowest discrimination complaint rate in luxury cruise history, and the highest employee satisfaction scores the industry had ever recorded. Naomi Chen would appear on the cover of Forbes with the headline, "The CEO Who Bought a Company to Change It," and hospitality schools would start teaching the Serenity Method as standard curriculum. But none of that future success mattered as much as the single moment when one 28-year-old woman stood in a spa that tried to diminish her and said with quiet power, "Not today, not ever again." If this story made you think differently about luxury, power, and dignity, smash that subscribe button. We're telling more stories like this every day. Which city are you watching from? Let me know below.